Welcome back, everybody. A group of Cuban-trained South African doctors who have been overseas for the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro Medical Collaboration Program are back in the country. The program started in 1996 as a collaboration between the two governments with the intention of improving the South African workforce capacity in the health sector. Now, with us in studio is Matsobane Molomo, who's been in the country for a year now. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers, and especially the South African trained almost to be doctors in South Africa and back in Cuba.
Well, I almost said doctor, but yeah, I'll be forgiven of calling you doctor, right?
It's a blessing I receive.
Take us through your experiences in Cuba. How did you find the training there? And just looking back and taking stock, did that program really achieve what it set out to achieve?
Well, before I can take you back to Cuba, because last year when I was here in Morning Life, we spoke about my experience in Cuba. I will compare it like the South African system. That's when I got to realize that we are fortunate for our government, the ANC, to send us in Cuba. Because if you check, South Africa, we are basically tertiary healthcare specialists. And Cuba, they specialize in primary healthcare. And that's what we need. So the experience, it was amazing. We learned a lot. We got to meet with people from different countries, different cultures. And then now we have to come back in South Africa to adapt, because as you know, countries, we have different diseases. In Cuba, I've never seen a stage 4 HIV patient. When you get in South Africa, those are common things that you see. And I understand the
HIV rate is close to nil in that country.
It's close to nil is because they prevent, and the youth in Cuba, when someone finds out that they're HIV positive, they don't really hide it. They go and test and they take medication. The challenge in South Africa...
So basically, there's no stigma attached?
No. In South Africa, it's a different story. People don't want to test. They tell you that if I test and find myself that I'm positive, I'll die. Anyway, you'll die. And we don't want to get you when you are already stage 3. Yeah. It's best when you get you in a stage 1, you take your ARVs, then you survive. You're going to live longer. Yeah.
How was life there? Because we understand that you guys sometimes got into mischief, you partied hard, got drunk, and even the KZN for MEC, Sibongiseni Dlomo, was at pains trying to explain to the Cuban government and to the Cuban authorities that, you guys got into praying and preaching instead of studying, knowing very well that religion is not such a big issue in Cuba. Take us through some of those issues.
Well, it's funny. Dr. Dlomo, he was a concerned parent. I understand him. But you must understand, anywhere, even in South Africa, I've been back for a year. I see people partying almost every day. In Cuba, they were complaining about weekends. In South Africa, I see people partying in Pretoria, Hatfield, every day. People, they get drunk every day. People, they do as they wish. With Cuban students, I wouldn't say I will justify it by saying it's okay for people to get drunk, to do whatever they wish. But it was a minimum number, a very minimum number. And at the same time, you cannot expect 1,000 students to behave the same. We are from different cultures, we are from different families, different backgrounds. Some people, it was a shock for them to be outside the country and spend so much long. Do you know that they have to spend 2 years in Cuba before they can come back? Yeah. So it's trauma. And it's we respond to trauma in different ways. It's the very same thing. If you come back, when you come back to South Africa, we don't finish like anyone else. You know, it's on media. People complain about the Cuban doctors. They know nothing. They are useless. But the truth is, it's the opposite. Because South Africans that's trained in Cuba, when they come back, they don't have that thing of I cannot work in rural areas. Because that's where the problems are. You go to provincial hospitals in South Africa, 65% of the patients are from rural areas. Why? It's because they don't have health services. There's no primary health care. My colleagues and I, we opened an NPO that is dealing with health, sports, and education. We were in Mokopane doing health awareness. Final year students, combination of the ones that trained in Cuba and the ones that are in South Africa, that have started their first year in South Africa. And when you got, it was the first time an old lady sitting at home, people come, they check your BP, they check your sugar levels. Such things never happens.
Really?
And who did that? It's because of we came back, we learned from Cuba. We didn't come back and say the only thing that we learned is to get drunk and go to taverns. No, we still go back to our people because we promised them. Remember, we promised them that send us to Cuba, we'll come back and serve you. And mark my words, come December, when you graduate, next year we start working, South Africa will never be the same.
Yes. Yes. You know, I'm actually glad you touched on the issue of trauma and dealing with trauma earlier on in your statement. And I'm quite curious to know about the support structures, particularly the emotional support structures, because, you know, if you find yourself in a foreign land with no support structures in place, some slip into depression. So how have you been able to deal with the psychosocial issues?
Well, it was complex because the idea of sending students to Cuba it was the best one, but the support structure was not that well until we received a visit by President Ramaphosa. By then, he was the deputy president. Okay. He then tried to understand what's really happening because, I mean, like, if someone is going through psychological problems, how are you going to express your emotions in Spanish? Yes. Because the doctors in Cuba, they speak Spanish. Those who speak English, they try. They don't really speak English, you understand? So it was always difficult, but the good thing about us, we were always united. You see, our support structure, I was in leadership in Cuba for almost 4 years of my lifetime in Cuba. And we created structures amongst ourselves because that's how Cuba, they teach you to solve problems by yourself. You don't complain and say, government did not send a psychologist, government did not send this thing, I'm not going to do anything. No, we solve problems by ourselves. And that's why the majority of us, we came back.
Yeah. You know, Cuba is a country of choice in the medical fraternity due to their successful implementation of the primary health care model. So from your analysis of the medical fraternity in South Africa, you've been back for quite a while now. You just mentioned that you've started an NPO. So where do we rank insofar as the implementation of the PHC, and what are the areas that the government needs to focus on in order to make sure that the successful implementation of the PHC does indeed come to fruition?
It's a shame because our government is way too better than Cuba economically. Infrastructure, we have better hospitals. But the problem in South Africa, I think, is managing. That's the biggest challenge. When we were doing our community awareness, there was a clinic. The MEC was there. Dr. Popi Ramato was there. Okay. There were patients who were complaining that clinics, they close at 12 or 11 o'clock on Fridays.
Really?
Yes. So those are the kind of challenges that I think South Africa we have to focus on. Because if our clinics are blocked, our clinics are not functioning, our clinics without medications, then you should expect those patients to be chronic. Because they'll go back home. I found a patient who the blood pressure was beyond 285 over 100 and something. And when I asked her, is it the first time? You said, no, I went to the clinic, they checked, it was the very same number, but they sent me home. So it's the matter of us as South Africans working together. The program that we're talking about, final year students going to the community, is a challenge. I think congratulations to University of Pretoria to allow us, because they are the ones who are partnering with us to make sure that we go to Limpopo and do this program. Congratulations to them. And
so which parts of our health system that needs to be overhauled or changed?
Primary health care is the most important one. Okay. I'm not saying tertiary care, we don't need it. We need the combination. That is why in our universities, you know, there are these ignorant doctors that think like Cuban doctors, they don't value anything. So what I'm trying to say is that they are the ones who should come and we unite and, you know, share ideas. Tertiary health care, this is what we can do. Primary health care, because we know primary health in and out. This is what we can do. Then we start from clinics, we go to hospitals, regional hospitals. Tertiary health care, it will be better if we start with our basis, because primary care in South Africa is not working. Okay. It's not working at all. And first, I would love to congratulate some of the students who have been studying in South Africa, because they've joined us and they're doing very well. They've joined us in University of Pretoria, other universities. Remember, I was not in South Africa for the past 5 years. So to adapt and learn in English, I've been studying in Spanish. Now I have to convert, learn in English. There are students who are helping us. You know, they tell us, no, this one we did in 4th year, and this is how we approach the patient. Such students, I would love to congratulate them, because it's not all of them. Some of them, they will just want to, you know, to demotivate you. But unfortunately, we are very strong. No one can demotivate us.
Right, Doctor. So you've got an exam coming up in October, right?
The exam is we have our final exam is in December. It's a Cuban exam.
Okay.
So we're gonna have Cuban professors. They will come.
They'll be coming to South Africa.
They will come in South Africa.
Okay.
Department of Health. They organize different areas because in that we have students in about 7 or 6 universities in South Africa. So we're gonna have our exams, and those who did not finish modules in South Africa, they will have to wait for next year. There's another exam next year around July before our graduations. Okay. So, you know, we think for everyone. Before graduations, we make sure that everyone is done and then we can move forward. So
can you categorically confirm on record that after December, I'll be calling you Dr. Molomo?
You will call me. You will call me Dr. Molomo. And
that's the spirit.
It's not mainly, you don't just be Dr. Molomo. My passion is in the community. Sure. I just love to see a black person receiving better services. Sure. And I call to all the health professions, nurses, cleaners, CEOs and everyone that let's not work for salary. Okay. Let's work with passion. Let's work from the heart. And let's save South Africa because we're in crisis now.
Matsobane, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to Matsobane Molomo for discussing the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro Medical Collaboration Program in Cuba with us. This is Morning Live. We take a short break. We'll be back in a flash.